Good evening, everybody. This is Joshua Boyd representing Goal Team 1, and today I'll be presenting on Facebook. We'll talk about the history of Facebook. We'll talk about their management style, the pillars of success, their dominance in the marketplace, as well as the competitive landscape. We'll talk about their server technology, the missteps along the way, whether or not we should trust Facebook, the threats to Facebook. We'll round out things with a SWOT analysis and recommendations. So essentially, the concept started out as Space Mash, which was a digital hot or not service. It didn't last long. Within a couple of days, it was shut down, but Zuckerberg took notice of how popular the service was, and so he registered the domain to facebook.com. Facebook was founded by 4 students in a Harvard dorm room, Mark Zuckerberg, Eduardo Saverin, Duska Moskovitz, and Chris Hughes. Now, this service solely started out for Harvard students, but by June, more than 250,000 students across 34 different universities had signed up. Later, in 2005, they had rebranded by dropping the from the name, and they started to open up the membership to service high school students and universities outside of the United States. By 2006, they continued to expand, opening up the service to anybody that was over the age of 13. 2006 was also the year that we saw organizations like Procter & Gamble recognize the reach of Facebook and starting to advertise through the platform. This is the same year we started to hear about privacy concerns. Now, in 2007, the introduction of Beacon was one of Facebook's first misstep that we'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation. Now, by 2008, this was a big year for Facebook, right? This is when they dethroned MySpace as becoming the most popular social media platform. They also launched a live feed feature to compete with the increasingly popular Twitter. At the same time, they also hired away Google executive Sheryl Sandberg as the company's new COO. By 2009, we started to see developers generating over $500 million of revenue coming from Facebook opening up their API to these programmers, allowing them to write software directly for the Facebook members. In 2010, we saw Hollywood capitalize on Facebook by launching the movie The Social Network, which was loosely based on the rise and creation of Facebook. And in 2011, we saw gaming developers like Zynga leverage Facebook for their reach and their API. And in that year, they actually accounted for 12% of Facebook's revenue. Now, Facebook, positioning themselves for an IPO, realized that they were falling behind in mobile, so they acquired rival Instagram for $1 billion. By May, they IPO'd and had the largest ever IPO for a tech company, raising $16 billion at a 1.02.4 billion valuation. At the same time, they had also reached about 1 billion active users globally. Now, in 2013, we saw Facebook collaborate with 6 different cell phone companies to launch Internet.org, which was essentially an internet service being provided to less fortunate individuals in developing countries. In 2014, Facebook took notice again that they were falling behind in another area of mobile, this time messaging. So they broke out the checkbook again and wrote a check to WhatsApp and acquired them for $19 billion. Now in 2016, Facebook's share prices started to soar, and this is the first time where we saw 82% of their $5.2 billion in earnings coming from mobile advertising. They also instituted updates to the newsfeed to help combat fake news and hoaxes. Now, continuing with developing the product, they launched Facebook fundraising in 2017, and they had doubled their user base to 2 billion monthly active users. In 2018, we saw some more acquisitions with Dreambit, which is an image recognition search engine company, and they also acquired biometric startup Confirm.io. 2018 is also when we heard about the Cambridge Analytica scandal, where basically they had harvested 50 million Facebook profiles to target voters during the US election. The FTC did their investigation, and they issued a $5 billion fine to Facebook. This hurt their bottom line, but what actually hurt worse was they lost $50 billion in market capitalization when the news of the data scandal broke out. Mark Zuckerberg also had to testify before Congress about data privacy concerns. Now, as it stands today, Facebook has roughly a market capitalization of around $550 billion. So the question you might ask yourself, well, how does a free service turn $1 billion or actually multi-billion-dollar profit? And one of the famous lines that Mark Zuckerberg uttered during his testimony in Congress was, "We run ads." Now, these ads show up on Facebook, Instagram, Messenger, and WhatsApp that account for 90% of Facebook's advertising revenue. Actually, almost 99% of their revenue is generated from advertising. Only about $825 million of revenue came from payments and other fees. They've made substantial investments, $2 billion, in fact, by acquiring Oculus Rift or Oculus VR. And they've also started to tap into blockchain, and they're investing in their own cryptocurrency called Libra. Now, this is a quick visualization of how Facebook's business model works. Essentially, users provide data to power Facebook's algorithm. Facebook then takes that user data and they sell targeted ads in the feed from businesses that are trying to reach certain individuals. Those ads then show up to the users, and then as users interact with them and convert to sales, the cycle repeats itself. Now, this visualization basically shows you the dominance that Facebook has in the advertising space. So let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about Facebook's management style. Facebook, essentially Mark Zuckerberg owns about 81% of Class B shares, giving him 53% of the voting rights for the company. He's responsible for setting the overall direction and product strategy for Facebook. Staff are empowered to move quickly to foster innovation and gain competitive advantages. The company's ability to scale successfully and gain wide popularity in the late 2000s has given rise to the 1.66 million daily active users worldwide as of Q4 of 2019. This allows Facebook to keep a dominant position due to network effects. The more users Facebook has, the more valuable the network. For many, switching costs would be perceived as high due to the emotional investment in Facebook. You get updates from friends and family with added functionality such as the marketplace, the workplace, even dating. People will spend more time on the site, and we've actually seen an increase in users, even though we've heard the data and privacy scandals. Facebook's single pillar of success, PR. Now, Facebook has been the victim of several controversies, right? Despite all of these negatives, Facebook has been able to maintain its success through strategic use of PR, which is something that other networks seem to struggle with. Mark Zuckerberg holds the key to success, successful PR by being an extremely engaged CEO who listens to the users and handles negative situations in a more personalized manner. Contributing to the success of PR are Facebook's network effects and switching costs. People continue to use Facebook despite the scrutiny because everyone else is using it, and they value how Facebook keeps them connected with others. Facebook users don't necessarily have a monetary cost to switching to another platform. Instead, users would lose things like photos, videos, friends that they might not be on other platforms, and features that are not offered by other platforms. So how did Facebook become dominant so quickly, right? Well, Facebook wasn't necessarily the first movers in the space, but it was still able to become successful by paying attention to these first movers and the failures from them. Facebook was initially created only for communication between Harvard students, then they expanded to other universities, then to companies, then eventually to people over the age of 13. This gradual introduction allowed Facebook to have a steady and controlled user growth in its early stages, allowing for a successful mass expansion of the mainstream. This control was also maintained by Zuckerberg and his ability to keep his stake of the company even through its expansion. He was able to do this by strategically handling the way the company is divided, allowing him to take risks without much concern for stakeholders. So who did Facebook leave in the dust? Facebook may be one of the dominant social media networks today, but there were other platforms that paved the way for Facebook. The most well-known is MySpace. Unfortunately, the owners of MySpace were too late to adapt to the newest trends and were blindsided by the success of Facebook. Other services like Friendster, Bebo, and Orkut were lesser known, but still relevant in other countries or for niche networking. Now, lastly, Google, who is notably a current competitor of Facebook, developed what could have been a successful social network dubbed Google+, but that was cut not too long after it was released. So let's meet the competition of Facebook. True competitors consist of Twitter, Tumblr, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Pinterest, TikTok, Periscope, and Reddit. Each of these platforms tries to offer a unique experience, although none of them have been able to have the same type of presence as Facebook. To put this into perspective, Twitter has roughly 330 million users, Pinterest at about 250 million, LinkedIn around 610 million, Reddit with about 1.64 billion, and TikTok at about 1 billion. If you add all these up, it reaches essentially the same amount of users that Facebook has today. Now, on an international level, we see Tencent and WeChat being the biggest competition for Facebook. They're a Chinese conglomerate that focuses on video games, AI, social media, just to name a few of the 600 plus business ventures that they're a part of. As I mentioned, though, the real competition is Google. If you take a closer look at Facebook's business model, you begin to realize that Facebook is not in the social media business as they are so much in the business of collecting personal data and turning that into an opportunity to sell valuable advertisements. When you frame the question in that way, their true competitor is Google. While Google does not report their total number of users across their services, they have announced that they have 1.5 billion active Gmail accounts, 2 billion active Android users, 1 billion active YouTube users, and despite offering premium services and selling a huge number of hardware devices, about 71% of Google's revenue comes from targeted advertisement. As a result, both Google and Facebook have become so powerful that they are subject to several antitrust lawsuits claiming that they hold an unreasonable amount of power. Now let's talk about Facebook's server farm technology. Facebook in the early days could essentially run on a single server, but now it requires hundreds of thousands to facilitate the endless sharing of video, photos, gameplay, and more by its billions of active daily users. Its first server farm was built in Prineville, Oregon in 2011. Now, the initial plan was to have a 100,000 square foot building, but Zuckerberg quickly realized that he needed a larger space to be able to house all of these servers and to be able to cool them effectively. So essentially, their server farms are around 300,000 square feet, which is larger than 2 Walmart stores, and they're only getting larger. Instead of utilizing traditional methods for building server farms, Facebook engineers have actually created their own technology and layouts, which allow them to expand rapidly and continue to innovate. Now, Facebook servers are different than others because they have been custom made based on the network needs. The custom components allow for efficient and cost-effective processing. Although the chips come from Intel, the motherboards are custom made, and as described by a former Facebook hardware engineer, they removed anything that didn't have a function. All cables and power supplies were set up backwards so that technicians could perform maintenance in cool aisles instead of being on the inside where all the heat is trapped. Facebook can manage these massive custom server farms using sophisticated systems that can handle large suppressions and outages so that users experience minimal to no downtime. Facebook has received a lot of attention for their innovative server farms, especially located in Sweden. The location in the Arctic climate allows Facebook to keep the building cool without running massive cooling systems. This is both cost-effective and energy-saving, while also providing efficient services for its users. Now, let's talk about some of the missteps, as noted earlier. Now, despite growing to be one of the the biggest and most influential companies in the world, Facebook has not been without its controversies. In 2007, Facebook's Beacon program, designed to share locations and purchases, made many users furious. Many of them were unaware that their purchases were being shared or how to stop this from happening. Thousands of users quickly petitioned for the company to remove this feature. This is an important theme, and most of all of Facebook's failures, they have been given away private information many of times, and their users have not been happy about it. This happened again in 2008 when Facebook changed all pages to default as a public page. And this came to the forefront in 2012 when the FTC forced Facebook into a settlement for not protecting their users' information. While many would think this would mark the end of Facebook's privacy struggles and that they would do a better job of protecting their users, this was just the beginning. In 2013, we saw 6 million Facebook users have their information leaked, including phone numbers and email addresses. 2016 mistakes came at the expense of Facebook's business partner. Facebook found that they had miscalculated how long users were viewing advertisements and that it had in fact been a major overestimation. They did apologize for this, but they never made any compensations to the advertisers. Now, as Facebook has grown, it has become difficult to regulate. As a result, there came to be many spam accounts on the platform that were promoting stories surrounding the 2016 election that were not true. Facebook cracked down and deleted millions of accounts, but the damage had already been done. Now, despite numerous leaks of user information, Facebook did not stop there. Mark Zuckerberg announced in March of 2018 that Facebook had made mistakes when it released the information of 50 million users to Cambridge Analytica, a consulting firm. Facebook tried to force Cambridge Analytica to delete this information once they had realized their mistakes, but it's still unknown exactly what happened with all of that information. So why trust Facebook? After a wake of data-related scandals, Facebook has pledged to do better, to give users control over privacy, improve privacy tools, allow users to control who sees what users share and how user data is used. Additionally, users can download their data. There is also a tool to control the information that business share with Facebook about your activity on other apps. To build secure services, Facebook has introduced two-factor authentication to protect against accounts from improper access, and end-to-end encryption, ensuring that messages stay and remain private, and secure data storage to prevent improper access of data. This development of better data practices will rebuild user trust over time. So the question of should kids be on Facebook is an interesting one. The use of social media has both its benefits and drawbacks. Many parents are concerned about the negative effects that come with online interaction, but with appropriate guidance and supervision, Facebook can bring a number of advantages for kids. Facebook allows children to keep up with family and friends while giving them a page for self-expression. With proper parental supervision, a Facebook page can teach a child good online social media habits. Social networking can be used to discuss school assignments and sports activity updates. Teaching good habits and monitoring use is critical to allowing Facebook access. It can easily become an addictive waste of time. Facebook also has a gateway to the internet since links and ads are everywhere. Additionally, kids can be mean. Even if you teach your kids how to behave, other kids can post mean comments. While Facebook does not allow accounts for those under the age of 13, many children create accounts with or without parental permission. We personally believe that parents should delay children's social media use for as long as possible and should never let your children's screen time be completely unmonitored. A technology contract is helpful in outlining guidelines for appropriate use and screen time once children are old enough to join. Now, when we talk about the threats of Facebook, Amazon comes up almost for any organization as a threat because they have a massive amount of capital, a massive amount of data. Currently, they hold 9% of the market as it relates to advertising. We also see blockchain being a threat to Facebook, giving users more control over their identity and data permission. We also see government regulations as a potential threat because they could force them to change their terms of service. TikTok is also an up-and-coming social media app. In fact, it was the most downloaded app in 2018, and they've made announcements to sell digital advertising. And as of right now, they have a total addressable market of around $1 billion. Now, Walmart, they're the largest retailer in the world, and they've actually recently made claims that they are building in-house capabilities to be able to sell digital advertising. And as we talked about previously, Google is always a threat and is Facebook's main competitor. Now, in terms of a SWOT analysis, we see some of the strengths with Facebook and the fact that they have a large revenue stream, they have a very recognizable brand, they do have a large consumer base, and they do have a bunch of talented people working for them. But some of the weaknesses that we've seen are the fact that there are privacy concerns, and this continues to be a common theme. Also, negative user experience kind of relates to that. We also see that there's a lack or low level of diversification in other business ventures. We're starting to see that get picked up with things like Oculus and Libra, but for the most part, as we've talked about previously, advertisement still seems to be their main cash cow. Now, in terms of opportunities, developing new products and business diversification will help them, and also penetrating into new markets, specifically China, to compete with Tencent and WeChat. Now, in terms of threats, we're seeing cybercrime and cyberbullying. We're seeing increased competition and market saturation as another threat, and then also emerging technologies. Now, in terms of recommendations for Facebook, we think that they should continue to invest heavily into research and development. We think they should continue to diversify their offerings beyond social media and advertising. So investments in blockchain and AR are a step in the right direction. We think that they should continue to enhance privacy and mitigate against cyberbullying and cybercrimes. We also think at this time they should invest in 5G infrastructure. There was a mention that engineers 1 hour a week actually use 2G service to access Facebook to see some of the challenges. But we think that investing in 5G infrastructure will allow them to deliver more data, more feature, and more services to its user base. We think that they should also invest in search to compete with Google, right? This is an advantage that they actually have over Google because of the deep web content that they possess. And lastly, we think that they should continue to acquire top talent and technology through acquisitions. With that being said, this wraps up our presentation for Facebook. We appreciate you taking the time to join us, and have a wonderful day.